Now, I want to emphasize that this unilateralism takes many forms. The United States is the biggest user of coercive economic measures other than tariffs, putting on sanctions on different companies, on individuals abroad, on banking sectors abroad. And so the U.S. is by far the biggest user of unilateral coercive measures. And they do enormous harm to populations all over the world, depriving populations of access to basic health care, to the most basic needs of food and clean water. They raise mortality rates. In other words, they are not only illegal, but they are extremely damaging to the health and well-being, especially of very poor people. The U.S., in addition, confiscates the assets of other countries, as it has done with the Russian Federation, with Venezuela, with Iran, with North Korea, with Afghanistan, and with other countries. It simply freezes the dollar holdings of other countries with which it has foreign policy differences. And this is an abuse of the prerogative of the role of the dollar in international settlements, because it is used by the United States as a weapon rather than as a payments settlement system. The United States, unfortunately, engages in many covert regime change operations, meaning that it engages not only in economic bullying, but in actually the attempt or the actual overthrow of governments. These have been now documented in very serious studies, counting by one excellent study, 64 covert regime change operations during the period 1947 to 1989. This is a staggering fact. No country should be overturning the government of another country under the UN Charter. Unfortunately, the U.S. is also engaged in arms buildups all over the world. No other country comes close to having the U.S. situation of 700 overseas military bases in 80 countries. This by itself, in my opinion, is highly detrimental to American security and a threat to the global peace. But it leads to arms buildups all over the world. And finally, I would add that the United States has unilaterally departed fundamental treaties of global significance, including from the Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty in 2002. The U.S. unilaterally abandoned the Intermediate Nuclear Force Treaty in 2019. And the United States is walking out, once again under President Trump, of the Paris Climate Agreement, which is a crucial global agreement under the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change for world security. In other words, the break of the multilateralism, the fact that the United States, such a powerful country and such an influential country in the world, is the least multilateral of all of the UN member states, poses major risks and challenges to the world. Economic trade, international trade, is not a win-lose proposition. It is a win-win proposition. When the trade relations are ruptured by unilateral tariffs, both sides lose. This is extremely sad. Of course, it's the poorest countries that lose the most when the WTO rules-based system faces such a crisis. The second cost, of course, is the arms race. The world is spending trillions of dollars per year on armaments right now, and God forbid they should be used. We must not use these armaments, but the waste of resources directed at these armaments is staggering. Many countries, including in Europe, are cutting their development aid budget to build their military budget. This is unacceptable for a peaceful world. and it will not satisfy our security in any way. The third cost, of course, is open conflict. These unilateral measures lead to war. And we have several wars raging precisely because countries are not obeying the international system. The Bulletin of Atomic Scientists tells the world that we are but 89 seconds from midnight on nuclear confrontation. This is another risk that comes from the unilateralism and the bullying. Of course, when we have conflict, when we have bullying, when we have unilateralism, we don't gain solutions that we desperately need for climate change, for the green economy, for the future of a sustainable world, for the Sustainable Development Goals. It is extremely important that we reverse from unilateralism and promote actively multilateralism and the UN Charter at every turn as the key for our safety, for our survival, and for our sustainable development.